Hi, I'm Josh Sundquist. Welcome to the salon. This is Mental Floss Video, and did you know that not all blind people read Braille? In fact, only 8.5% of the blind community uses Braille as their primary reading medium. Braille books are often very expensive and also heavy. For example, the regular ink text paperback version of the first Harry Potter weighs under a pound and costs less than $7 on Amazon. The Braille paperback version is 5.4 pounds and $61. That's the first of many myths about blindness that I am going to debunk here today. It is a myth that most people who are legally blind are totally blind. Legally blind means that your vision must be 20/200 or less. Only about 18% of people who are visually impaired are legally blind, and only about 10% of those who are legally blind are totally blind. In other words, the vast majority of people with visual impairment can see some color or at least tell the difference between light and dark. It is not true that total blindness is like what you see when you close your eyes. A person with total blindness, also known as no light perception or NLP, by definition sees no light and no color, including the color black. So being totally blind is not the same as closing your eyes or being in a pitch dark room. It means literally seeing nothing. Think of it this way. Try to look right now out the back of your head. What do you see? Well, not the color black. You see nothing at all. It's a myth that blind people don't dream, because they do. And they dream about the same sorts of things as sighted people. Social interactions, successes, failures, really weird dreams that you try to tell someone about the next day and you know they were only listening to be polite. Even people with total blindness have dreams that they experience as a narrative using senses other than sight. In fact, one study found that totally blind people had 4 times as many nightmares as sighted people. It's also a misconception that blind people don't dream as vividly as sighted people. That same study I just referred to asked 3 groups of different people to track their dreams. Totally blind people, those with limited sight, and sighted people. Compared to the sighted people, the totally blind participants were 3 times as likely to report tasting things and twice as likely to experience smells in their dreams. It is a myth that blind people have special gifts like a 6th sense and or heightened abilities to use the normal 5 senses. Like maybe you've seen Daredevil, hopefully the Netflix version and not the one with Ben Affleck, and you think all blind people can fight crime with their super hearing vision, especially when it rains. The truth is, maybe unfortunately, much more mundane. Most research suggests that blind people don't have sharper senses per se, but they do compensate for their loss of vision by paying more attention to their other senses. For example, listening more carefully or learning to work on their memory without taking notes. It is a misconception that sight is the only way to sense distance and space. So humans don't have a sonar-like sense quite like a bat, but people can learn to echolocate, which is to say, use sound to measure distance and space. People can learn, for example, to distinguish open doors from closed doors. They can sense when they are passing by houses as they walk along the sidewalk. They can even sense the type of materials used in the buildings. They do this by making small noises and listening for the echoes. Some make clicking sounds with their mouth. Some use clickers. Some listen for the metal tip of their white cane hitting the ground. Also, because of the density of nerves in the human face, we have the ability to sense nearby objects, an echolocation-like ability that's known in the visually impaired community as facial vision. There is a persistent myth that blind people can't have normal jobs. Obviously, this is untrue. In fact, there are blind people working in almost every field. Politicians, athletes, corporate executives. I recently went to a restaurant where all of the servers were blind and you eat in complete darkness without knowing what food is on your plate. It was crazy. It's a misconception that all people who are blind or visually impaired use a cane. According to the Washington State Department of Services for the Blind, less than 2% of Americans who are blind or visually impaired use a white cane for orientation and mobility. The rest rely on the vision they do have, a sighted guide, or a service animal. Most people assume that white canes are only used to detect obstacles within reach of the cane. Now, they do help detect those obstacles, but as we discussed earlier, they also help a user echolocate their surroundings. So based on the sound of the cane hitting the ground, a user might be able to hear that they were nearing a wall without the cane actually reaching the wall. A cane also tells the user about the hardness and texture of the ground in front of them based on the feel in the handle when the tip hits the ground. A very common myth is that all blind people use guide dogs. In fact, only about 2% of the blind community uses a guide dog. Guide dogs are expensive because they require so much training. And after you own one, you have to spend a lot of time and money caring for it. A very common misconception is that all guide dogs are seeing eye dogs. Seeing eye dog is actually a trademark term for a dog trained by the Seeing Eye, which was the first guide dog training organization in the United States. Today, there are many schools that train guide dogs, but only dogs trained by the Seeing Eye can officially be called Seeing Eye dogs. That said, it's become one of those trademark phrases that is incorrectly used to describe all generic products in a category, like Post-it note, popsicle, frisbee, dumpster, etc. A lot of people assume that a guide dog can lead a person to a specific location, but that's not true. Even trademarked Seeing Eye dogs don't have GPS in their dog brains. A guide dog can do pretty great things, like stop an owner from crossing the street when it's unsafe to do so, detect obstacles that a cane might not, like a pothole or a tree branch, and even find an empty seat in a waiting room or a bus stop. But the dog doesn't memorize street maps. The human has to know the route they wish to take, which they typically learn by keeping track of cardinal directions like north and south and knowing how many blocks or steps to cover before turning. It is false that blind people don't pick up after their guide dogs. Guide dogs go through rigorous training for all sorts of things, including going to the bathroom on command. Male dogs even learn to pee with their leg down like female dogs. The owner gives the command and then strokes the dog's back to see whether or not they will have some cleanup to do. This also gives them a good idea of where the poop will be. From there, it's about as unpleasant a task as it is for sighted people. Most people assume that dogs are the only guide animal, but that's not true. Some people are allergic to or scared of dogs, and luckily there's another option for a guide animal: miniature horses. Kind of like a puppy-sized elephant, except a horse. I'm not making this up. These are real horses that are about 36 inches tall. Miniature horses are easy to train, they're naturally cautious, and pack animals, so they're a great fit for a guide animal. They can also live up to 30 years, which is way longer than a guide dog. Miniature horse guides are housebroken and can even legally fly on airplanes. Finally, we've echolocated our way back to the salon to debunk the last myth for today, which is the myth that if a person totally blind from birth could suddenly see, they'd be really happy. We have this sort of mythic archetype of a blind man seeing, and he's like, wow, look at all the colors, everything is beautiful. In fact, there are exceptionally rare circumstances in which totally blind people have gained sight with surgery. But it turns out that making that adjustment is incredibly challenging, both neurologically and emotionally. The most famous example is a man named Sidney Bradford, who gained sight at age 52, but was disappointed by both his own and his wife's appearance, and sadly he fell into a depression from which he never recovered. Thanks for watching Mental Floss video, which is made with the help of all these wonderful people. Once again, I'm Josh Sundquist, and if you want to learn more about blindness and adjusting to sight for the first time, please check out my debut novel, Love and First Sight, in bookstores January 3rd. And let me know in the comments, if you could gain a new sense, what would it be? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to be awesome.